Okay.
Are you online, Christina?
I'm online.
So you need me to put my headphones in?
Oh, I'm using.
Okay. Oh, no, you're fine. I'll put my microphone on. Okay.
Want two of those. Emily, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I couldn't hear that either.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I had to switch microphones. I was just saying we have a few questions. We have like a list of things that were given to us and generally just relating to targeted interventions and sort of like behavior management.
Yeah.
So the first one,
Go ahead.
sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh, go ahead. I was just gonna start one of the questions, so you can go ahead.
What behavior interventions and practices are in place at Peak?
So with the behavior, are you guys aware of the behavior management system? I know that we've sent out like a few PDs at the beginning of the school year, a few PowerPoints, but I can briefly talk about it. So as far as like behavior management, we have 3 levels. We have level 1, which is your typical like kids talking in class, not wearing the proper uniform, leaving class without permission. It's just a big list. And then we have our level 2, which is a little bit more severe, like plagiarism. And then we have like threats and stuff like that, like like minor threats, you would say. And then we have our level 3, which is like bringing a gun to school, terroristic threats, things like that of that nature, where it's like super severe. And so level 1 is pretty much managed by teachers and myself, and then level 2s are automatics for deans. Like our deans are the ones who take care of it. And then level 3s are our deans with the director, and then if need be, the managing director is involved. And usually with level 3, that's when like a kid is put up for expulsion, and so they'll have an expulsion hearing. The network has its own attorney, they show up, and then it's like everybody who's involved shows up and they just have a meeting.
Okay. All right. So for these different levels, what types of interventions are there?
Yeah. Okay. So for your basic one, level 1 violations, we have the intervention of the IDF, where like the teacher inputs, what she did in the classroom. Did she do a seat change? Did she have a restorative conversation with them? And then obviously once it escalates to when they have 6 incidences, that's when I come in, and then they go on a tracker. This year we haven't seen many trackers just because it's been virtual, but in the years before, when it's been in person, we had like 6 to 15 kids at a time on trackers. And so what it was, it's like when a student goes on a tracker, that means that they're meeting with me weekly. All their teachers are signing their trackers every class period, and they're being rated on the behavior expectations, how they behaved in the classroom, and how prepared they were. And then their parent also signs it every day. And then they're on this for 3 weeks. And so we also do circles with those students. We'll do some mediations if need be between them and other scholars. If more scholars are involved, we'll do like teacher mediations too, teacher and scholar mediations. It's just, I can send you a list if you guys want of
nice.
just a different interventions. Yeah.
For the circles, what takes place in those circles?
So it's a restorative circle. Have have you guys ever done a circle or been involved in a circle? Okay, so it's typically, it depends on what the theme is. If it's awareness, if it's, we've been doing, this school year, we've been doing a lot of um, social distancing circles where it's like we're talking about like the importance of social distancing. We have a lot of kids in person who just don't like who are getting too close to other scholars or
Yeah.
sharing food and all that stuff. And so we've been doing circles with them just about the
Okay,
importance of
listen.
the social distancing rules.
Have you had to like switch up interventions now that we are virtual, like especially for virtual scholars?
Yeah, definitely. With in person, obviously, it's I mean, I just felt like it was a tad bit easier because I feel like proximity is super important. So I feel like the teachers just really had that where, it's a quick, hey, like readdress or redirect. I mean, and then, or they would just be like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and change your seat and this and that. But because of all the norms that we have, because of the safe practices that we have, that's not so easily done. It's not like we can say, hey, you've done this so many times now, I'm going to have to switch you classes or I'm going to have to change your seat. I feel like a lot of it now has come down to communication and parent communication. And so that's like one of our biggest interventions is like making sure that our parents are aware of what their students are doing. And so that they could also help us out and have those conversations with their kids at home, like, hey, I need to make sure that you are practicing the safety guidelines. So I would say, yeah, they have changed, and a lot of it has just become like we depend quite a bit on our parents.
Yeah. Because I have some of the kids that have been getting a lot of IDFs in my
Yeah.
pod. You know my pod. But yeah, it's really limited what we can do because,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
well, you're going to talk to your friends. Well, we can't move you to another spot in the classroom because there are no spots in the classroom.
Yeah, exactly. That's been very difficult. Yeah, so it's just like getting creative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So those are mainly for like level 1 offenses. What are some interventions that are done for level 2?
Level 2, as once it comes to discipline, either Mr. Wynn or Mr. Harvey, depending on who the dean is for that grade, they're the ones who will do the disciplinary action. My job as a student support specialist is to come in and do a restorative practice. So usually with those, we've had like where a kid, sexually harassed a girl, or we've had it where, there's been bullying or there's been plagiarism. We've had kiddos just be culturally insensitive to others. And so what I do in those cases is we have an assignment that they have to do. And so what it is they have to write like a 3-page essay research paper. And they just have to answer a series of questions, like what happened, what did you learn from this, the typical stuff when it comes to being reflective. But also they also have to research about like what's going on in the greater community. Has something like this happened in your community? How was the community affected? And then how are you going to move forward with this? Like, how are you going to change, and how will we know that this is something serious, that you're taking this seriously? And so they'll write that essay. They'll also do a presentation, whether it's, by slideshow or however they want to do it. But we need something like tangible that they can show us. And then they will present it in front of myself, their dean. The director is present if they want to, or either invited. The teacher in which it occurred, like if it was in a class or if it was usually like plagiarism or stuff like that with the teacher, or whoever class it was involved, will let the teacher know. And they're present as well. So all the parties that were involved, they'll be in the presentation as well. The counselor usually, yeah, it just varies. So, but yeah, so they have to present that to us. Um, so that's the restorative piece. Sometimes we'll have, they'll be referred out to the counselor if it's something a little bit more severe and they need to meet with the counselor more often.
Mhm.
But usually that's like the starting piece of like them doing the research, and the why this is severe and how it's like, it's not a joke or it's not something that should be taken lightly. But then as far as like the disciplinary action, what I've seen a lot of is they'll either have in-school suspension or out-of-school suspension, community service. They'll have to maybe help out our operations crew. Hasn't really helping out operations hasn't really been a thing this year, just because of the guidelines, safety guidelines. But in the past, it has been a big thing where it's like if a kid is given in school suspensions for like, let's say a week, then some of the time when they are in school suspension, like maybe two hours are allotted to helping out operations. That means like taking out the trash, just helping them do things around the school.
Mhm. Okay. All right, so I think, Emily, like looking at the critical questions, I think we covered what counts as misbehavior. Ish, do you think we covered that? I'm just looking through our questions. Sorry, I was asking Emily for like what counts as misbehaviors. That's one of our second critical questions. Do you think we've covered that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've covered that.
All right. We also have, so how are behaviors framed? Like when you talk with scholars and are dealing with this, like what's the mindset and framing of the behaviors that scholars do that aren't appropriate for at school?
Well, this is all based on the school code of conduct, which every scholar receives. At the beginning of the school year, if they are a new scholar, they receive the school code of conduct, and then this is all done through the PAC meeting. So this is all done through, the front office, through our parent liaison. When a new student is coming into peak, like they're onboarded with all this information, and they actually have to sign a paper saying that they understand what behaviors are appropriate and which ones are not, while at peak or at any uplift school. And then if they are a returning scholar, then at the beginning of the school year, they do a recommitment form, and parents and scholars also sign this form saying that they're recommitting to the school of conduct, that they are saying that they have read the school the book for the school of conduct, and that they are aware of the behaviors. But it's quite a big list. I have it here. Do you guys want me to share that with you as well?
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Okay. So
For the framing of the conducts, is that more of just like this is you agreed to this and you broke that agreement type of thing?
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much that. Yeah, that's it. So I'm sending you that, and I'm sending you the interventions. I'll send you guys also the PowerPoint that talks about our behavior management system.
Okay.
We also have a question more specifically about like students who are on IEPs who are identified as emotionally disabled. Are there some specific supports for them?
As far as like the specific supports for them, whenever one of those kids comes across my desk, I make sure that I collaborate with who is it called? I collaborate with Ms. Johnson, who is the SPED coordinator, as to make sure that we are following guidelines, and that we're not doing anything that I don't know, like that we're not supposed to do. because they do have specific guidelines with them, we can't target them, you would say, or we can't give them what we would give like other kids. For instance, and they really have, I really haven't had much issues, but for instance, like last year, a year and a half ago, I had one scholar who was constantly just having level 2 violations. And so with that scholar, we just had to meet a lot. And he was getting to the point where he was getting a lot of OSSs and ISSs. And then at that point, we just had to get creative. So he would, like, instead of giving him full day ISS, he would get about like 1/3 of a day ISS, and then the rest of the time in ISS, he would get support from his sped teachers, but they would come into ISS and help him out there. And so then that's how we were able to, say, well, he's still receiving the support he needs. And so, I mean, like we were in compliance at that point. So
Yeah.
it just gets tricky because we are a smaller school and because we don't have like the personnel, obviously, then it gets super tricky, but we haven't had many of those cases. But yeah, we just.
Okay. So then in terms of for working with teachers, for students who have emotional disabilities, is that more of something that Mrs. Johnson works with them for, or do you help also formulate those plans of how they can be supported?
No, yeah,
behaviorally?
that's more of a Ms. Johnson thing. From my understanding, I am aware that they have, or they used to have, obviously now because we're virtual, they don't, but they used to have an office where students, if they were having a moment, then there would be teachers there that would help them, and they would come down to that office specifically to help them out while they were having a moment. But obviously, I mean, we don't have that anymore with everything being virtual. But yeah, so that's more of like a Miss Johnson thing. She took the lead on that.
All right. In terms of what's counted as aggressive or violent behaviors, is that limited to physical, or is it also verbal? How is it treated?
Okay, can you repeat that question? Sorry, you went in and out for me.
Sorry. Aggressive and violent behaviors, is that does that include verbal, or is it just physical included for that categorization?
It could be both. It depends on what happened, exactly what happened. If it is like a threat and there's an actual plan, I think one time we had one scholar who was like threatening somebody over social media, but they showed a gun, and so it just depends on the situation. And obviously that was just verbal because it wasn't like they were in front of them, but because they did have a gun and because they did show it, because they were threatening, that was yeah. So yeah, it could be verbal or also physical.
Okay. Okay, so in terms of interventions, is there any work that is aimed at, like, just I know from some of our classes, like it's been stressed that, not necessarily if scholars are not on the right behavior, it's not necessarily a scholar problem. It could be an issue within the classroom and how it's being run. So is that looked at peak when we're running into behavioral issues, or?
Yeah, definitely. So last year, before COVID, we did have, and usually I see this with new teachers, but we had a new teacher who was just, I don't think it was just a teacher thing. I think kind of like you said, it was a whole class thing. Like the class was, struggling to adapt to her style, and she was struggling with the class. And so she received just a lot of support by, like, I would come in, our director would come in, we would tag team, but I came in and we did what is it called, respect agreements with the class. So that was one intervention where the class and her came up with what should this what should this classroom look like? How am I going to treat you? How are you going to treat me? And how we're going to respect the whole class. So we did those, and then I would go in every day for about whenever she would have class. I would observe most of her classrooms, but there was one class in particular that needed just extra support. And so I would go in for like the first 20 to 30 minutes of the classroom and just be in there. At first, I was just observing, and then just pretty much trained her on how to do her own little behavior management system in the classroom, to the point where she just came up with like a little tally system. And it just helped with accountability, but it also helped with just the management of the classroom. It just diminished like those little things where like the kids were just giggling, or they knew which buttons to pick. And so she just received the support that kind of way. So it was between me and the director, who went in and just kind of helped her out with that behavior management. So it just depends on the teacher, and it depends on if they're open to that. Like we were not like, oh, I'm coming in and doing this. It was more like, what do you think about this? And obviously, like, she was very open to it. And so yeah, it definitely saw a huge improvement. Obviously, like, it just wasn't her. Like I said, I think it was just the dynamic of the different personalities in that specific classroom.
Okay.
We've done circles with teachers also, and like whole class circles where we just see where there's just like a lot of IDFs coming in. There were a lot of IDFs coming in from a specific class, and the violations seem to be like specific themes of like disrespect or insubordination, and like, okay, well, what's going on, And so, speaking with scholars, getting them on trackers and stuff like that, and then seeing, okay, it's very repetitive. It continues. So what's going on? And so being able to go in there and observing, but then after that observation, having a few circles with that class and that teacher is also another practice that we do.
All right, so Emily, I'm looking at the considering disability question. I'm trying to figure out how to frame some of them, considering that this is very much specific knowledge to Dr. Tan.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
I'm looking at the question that's all about conserving disability and rightful presence. And I'm trying to figure out how to, I don't know, I guess word questions about that, because it's very specific wording to Dr. Tan's class.
If I understand.
Do you have any
the
ideas?
second list of questions are ones that we're writing about.
Oh, okay. Whoops. I thought it was. Oh, okay. Never mind.
We have to address students.
Like some of them seemed like, I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. Some of them, I don't think there's.
Some of them are a mix. Yeah. Are there any supports in place for students who have trauma?
That would be more, we refer them to our social counselor. So if they have trauma, then we'll obviously refer them to our social counselor. But I don't know if you guys know, like, the network now has a family therapist, and now they just started doing telehealth. And so, or we'll refer them out. But as far as like specific interventions or something like that, or resources that I don't deal with that.
Is that something that ever comes up in discussions with like students or parents about behavior issues? Or is that usually something that maybe only the counselor would hear about?
Usually it comes from hear about. As far as like I've had, for instance, this school year, there is a special case where there is a student who is going, I would say, is going through trauma. It's ongoing, and so because that scholar is not comfortable or hasn't built the rapport with our social counselor because she's new, and because she's built the rapport with me, then that's the only reason why I am taking the lead in her case. But usually it's rare when it comes up. And usually if it comes up, it's like hearsay, and then our teachers usually will straight refer to the social counselor. So seldomly do I get those trauma cases. If something does come up in a circle, or something does come up when I'm having check-ins with scholars, then, I have to refer to the social counselor.
So is there any sort of coordination between you and the social counselor when it comes to behavioral interventions if a case where a child has trauma comes up?
Definitely, not just with trauma, just in general. So the social counselor and myself and the deans meet every Tuesday. And so we meet once a week, usually for about an hour, and we just talk about what kids are on our radar. Have we heard anything from any teachers? Who do we need to check in with? And we just kind of do action steps and see who's doing what with each scholar that is on our radar. And so yeah, and during those times, usually if there's like a high trauma kid or something, then we'll talk about it. Or she'll give us an update that does not compromise, the students' verbal information, just the generic of
Yeah.
like, yes, they're progressing through this, or or no, they need these resources from you guys. Or and then usually, I don't know if you guys have received any emails or anything like that, but usually Mr. Wynn will send out an email, or Mr. Harvey will send out an email saying, for this scholar, can you guys please do this in the classroom, or something like that. And that usually comes from when we've like convened and we've like collaborated and talked about, oh, this scholar needs this kind of support. So yes, so we collaborate once a week, and that's how we usually will know or figure out how we can best target or intervene with the scholars.
I think that's all the questions I have. I don't know, Erica, do you have any other?
Yeah, I don't think I have any more questions either. And
Thank you so much for-
yeah, so if you could just send us that code of conduct for the scholars, and then what was the other one? Oh, the interventions.
Interventions, and then I will send you the what is it called? The behavior management system.
Okay.
I think I have it in PDF form also, the
All right.
presentation. So I'll send those out. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email me or call me. I don't know if you guys have my phone number. You can text me. You can also text me if you're having issues with scholars in the classroom.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Have a great day, guys. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, I will share the recording with you once I'm done getting it all set up.